and he basically shared his recipe with me, and he didn't feel threatened. It's a classic entrepreneur's tale. And so I think the biggest surprise to me is right after I merged, it was like, whoa, okay, now I see how this can work. You read and read and read. She says you zoom and zoom and zoom. And so this is the book his book next is like poetry for entrepreneurs.
There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dreamcatchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome, and we are in Arkansas this morning, ladies and gentlemen. We've got David Trent in the building, the man, the myth, the legend. If you guys haven't heard about him, it's because I'm getting the exclusive. This is David's first podcast interview. He's a very successful entrepreneur who has made some big waves in the financial services industry, and he has exited, y'all. He got to exit 6, and I don't know how many zeros were on the check, but I know that he did pretty well, and I won't ask him to divulge that with you all, but I will tell you that he's been through many of the exits, and he's helping other people exit now. So with that intro, David, welcome to the Dreamcatchers podcast, man. So good to be with you.
Excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure, man. You've been such a genuine spirit. It's really interesting. When I talk to David, I see him writing copious notes and then going and taking action on the backside of it. And so when I asked him if he'd ever been on a podcast after he shared some of his career success with me, and he said no, I was like, man, we got to share your story. And so it's my belief that on the backside of this, David is going to be asked to be on so many podcasts, he's going to have to turn them down. So David, you're a successful NEO, a newly exited operator. You sold last year, if I'm not mistaken, 2023?
Correct. Yes.
2023, and you walked out. And so let me ask you this, because let's get to the dark part. Did you know what it was going to feel like the day after you signed the papers? And did you get a check or did the wire hit? Which one did you do?
Well, the wire hit. So I guess I really took for granted, I really had a decent idea. Now I was probably 20%, but I had a pretty good idea. I knew there was a lot of energy. I'll never retire. I've never, not every moment of every day is a thrill, but I've always been blessed. And I think I've worked at it. I know I have, but it's blessed because I love what I do. And I've never counted the number of hours I work. And it's never felt like that to me. So now there's in any entrepreneurial journey, there's tough times and challenges. And so, but as I've grown older, you realize those challenges are the biggest blessings because you learn and grow and build your character and come up with breakthroughs through those times.
Now, we started with the kind of the epilogue, which is you selling your company. And so tell us a little bit about the journey. Did you come from money? Did you just walk into a business that your parents started and you just took it to the next level and sold it to somebody who was, I don't know, a strategic buyer and willing to overpay? Like, give us a little bit about the journey from where you started and how you got to this place of exiting.
So let me start with my parents. My parents were high school educated, so no, I did not have the blessing of having a family war chest to start a company with, or money. And so was blessed, however, that I grew up in a household with my wife calls it the Beaver Cleaver household. Just two parents encouraged us, told us we could be whatever we wanted to be, do whatever we wanted to do. And so my journey with entrepreneurship began when I was 24. Prior to that, I was working at a bank, and I realized, man, the path for me to build wealth is going to be like slow. And so I got into what I call eat what you kill, straight commission sales when I was 24 years old. So that's 36 years ago. Was blessed that I went to work for New York Life. They had a phenomenal training program, but it was straight commission. And so that's when the journey began. yes, I was a W-2 employee, but I was really an entrepreneur. I just was building my own book of business. And so started there. Um, they really taught me how to go get relationships and develop and cultivate relationships. I had great mentors there that talked to me about reading and learning. And so that journey, that was from ages 24 to 31. At probably age 28, I fell in love with the investments world. And it's kind of like that was the moment where I said, this is what I want to be when I grow up. And so I knew I knew people that were working at Merrill Lynch, at Dean Witter at the time, at some of what we call the big wirehouses. And these were guys that were making really good money. And I looked at them and I go, man, they're not, I'm as sharp as those guys. And so age of 31, I went to work for Morgan Keegan, which was a regional version of a Merrill Lynch. They were located in the South and Southeast. Had a guy that hired me. And so I only worked there for 2 years. Midway in, I found a mentor. His name was Larry Washka. He had started his own firm. He'd left Merrill Lynch after 5 years and started his own firm. And so this is 1994. He started an RIA, Registered Investment Advisor, fee only wealth management practice. It was kind of a newer kind of concept at the time. I wouldn't say new, but it was still early in that realm. So I took Larry to lunch probably 7 times. He was so kind, and he basically shared his recipe with me, and he didn't feel threatened. He knew, about the fifth lunch in, I said, I want to do what you're doing. And so huge blessing. And so when I was 33, I jumped out, built a business plan, started Trent Capital Management from scratch, built out the pro forma. And so I'm building a fee only money management practice. I can't go hit a big lick. I mean, if I bring a client on, they're paying 1%, basically money management fees, and I'm getting that quarter by quarter. And that's the way I wanted to do it. And it was just revenue didn't come in near as quick as I thought it would. Expenses were more than I thought they would be. It's a classic entrepreneur's tale, right?
Yeah.
And so 5 years were just brutal, but I just stuck it out and kept grinding day in, day out. I look back and I don't know how I even got over the hump. Got over the hump after 5 years. And I think I literally think it may have been a little sooner, but I think that was the first point where I had more revenue than expenses. So had a lot of debt built up, but got it over the hump, and then was able to keep growing it. And I don't know if you want me to continue on this vein. I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep
Okay.
going.
So fast forward to 2021, had grown to 200 families, 200 million under management, and merged with a firm called Legacy Capital. So that was a true blessing. I merged, had two partners in that firm, and then we combined forces and were able to take advantage of each other's strengths. And then I started recruiting immediately a team out of Northwest Arkansas. They ended up coming on board with us in February of 23, and that took us over $1 billion assets under management. And so I had transitioned all of my clients over that kind of 2021 to early 2023 period, and was fortunate to be able to do that. I won't go into great detail on that, but had two younger advisors that we had a great system to transition those clients. And then at that point, I thought I would just do business development for the firm, but I got to thinking and thought, man, this may be a good time to exit. So I went to my partners. They were open to it. I won't go into great detail, but we were in talks to do that. Some things happened that led to a business divorce. And so they basically, I exited not the way I had thought. Let me back up a step, because I had, when we merged in 21, I sold 20% of my firm to them. I was still had the most ownership in the firm. And then I had another point where I sold some interest to two younger advisors. So I kind of had 3 bites of the apple exit. The third one was not the way I had envisioned, but I learned a ton through that. You can look at it as unfortunate. I think it was meant to be because it took me kind of to where I am now. And so that all kind of finished up between June and September last year, and really started dove in and said, okay, what's next for me? And so that's the story. It felt like a long diatribe, but
Well, when I listened to it, I mean, I think you broke down 30 years into about 2 minutes.
yeah. Yes, for
Which,
sure. Yeah, right at 30, 94 when I started, or 96 is when I started the firm. So not quite 30, but if you go back to, when I was 28, is really when I started. I did do financial investment stuff at New York Life. It's just they're an insurance company, and I knew I needed to get to a traditional broker dealer. So
yeah, so that's fascinating. So 3 bites of the apple, it means you sold a piece of the company 3 times. A lot of people just hope that they can sell theirs once, but you sold it, grew it, sold it, grew it, and then sold it again. What would you say was the biggest surprise in your process of exiting?
the biggest surprise for me was prior to merging. I don't know if surprise is the right word, but it kind of was. Prior to merging, I was just so I desired so much to figure out how am I going to transition this company. And so because it was owner dependent prior to that. I mean, if I couldn't just walk out the door, and we were doing things. And so I had 2 advisors. Well, one was our chief investments officer, but he was really helpful in transitioning. I was starting to transition clients before we merged, but merging just gave me the resources. The firm I joined with said we're doing some things that we weren't doing, and we were vice versa. And so I think the biggest surprise to me is right after I merged, it was like, whoa, okay, now I see how this can work. And then you go, hindsight's 2020. Why wouldn't I have looked for this before? But it's probably God's timing. It's just the way it happened. And so that was a very pleasant surprise, I will say. And so the other surprise is the third bite of the apple exit was definitely not a vision that I had, right? So, but I even learned a lot through the business divorce process and going through that, and navigated it really well. And there's some unfortunate things that come out of that, but I wouldn't change anything. So
I think having regrets is a waste of time a lot of the time. So I think you're wise in that approach.
but
So
that's you need to trademark that. Regrets are a waste of time. So
you can't fix them. I mean, what are we going to do? Hold ourselves hostage there? So what's cool is you went through at least the first 4 exits. So you went from an employee at an insurance company, knowing that you wanted to be an investment guy, to working at an investment company, to starting your own investment company.
right.
And when you walked out that door, you said, man, I had more expenses than I had revenue. So that probably made it pretty hard for you to hire people, I would assume.
For sure. I did from day one at New York Life. For whatever reason, I hired a full-time executive assistant when I was 24, and people told me, "You're nuts, man. You're just getting started." And I'm not even sure why what compelled me to do that. And it was, I mean, it was it was obviously wasn't super expensive, but so when I took that assistant with me to Morgan Keegan. She ends up, instead of just working for me, and you may have listeners that have gone through this if they've been in the business, she starts working for me and 4 other people. Well, then you don't have an assistant, right? Because all 5 of us, when we need something, we need it right away. I tried not to do that, but we all do. It's a natural to do that. So when I started, she had already left. She got frustrated. So when I started, I said, I'm going to start with a full-time assistant. So I did. So you say I couldn't afford, probably couldn't, but I did start with that. And inside of that 5 years, I'm trying to remember if I may not have until after 5, but when we merged, I had a total of 9 on my team. And the firm I merged with, I believe, had 10 or 11. So we got right at 20 post-merger. But I continued, I took on, obviously, I felt like it was important to have someone helping me from day one. And I'm not saying that's the way you have to do it, but so I guess I had the concept of who, not how, maybe early on, but that's a big
Yeah,
challenge.
I think it's really smart that you did it that way. I always question whether the person does the administrative support and then they say, hey, I'm the sales engine, I'm going to go do the sales stuff, or they hire somebody to help with lead generation. And then they're like, I'll take some more of this administrative stuff on because it's not that much in the beginning so that I can have somebody kind of multiplying the force when it comes to sales. And you did what I consider the traditional route of the administrative person coming in so that you can be the evangelist and tell the story of the company and get the allocation of the assets so that you guys can manage it and collect some fee. Like that, exit 1 is chief everything officer. Exit 2 is you hire somebody and some things start happening without you having to do everything, but you're managing that person. And then exit 3 is when you get out of managing the frontline workers, but you manage the manager of those frontline workers. And it sounds like you got through those exits before you got to the place where you went to the merger and then you actually got out of the day to day. Is that a fair characterization of the journey?
That's very fair. What I was doing, a few years prior to merger is in client meetings, I would always have me and one or two, sometimes three, but one or two other team members. And so we got a pretty good system going. And then clients got used to that, my team communicating with them. And it was interesting. Early on in my career, I really loved the money management part of things.
Mm-hmm.
As time went on, I became I wanted great outcomes with how we manage money, but I became less interested in that and more interested in as time went on in business development and bringing on relationships, and then kind of doing what I call for me was the fun part of the relationship is taking people to dinner, taking them on trips, and just cultivating that relationship with those clients, knowing their situation, but I'm not doing all the day to day, the nuances of their retirement plans, and I'm plugged into all that. But as time went on, I thought, man, business development and relationship building is really what I love. And so, and that's evolved since I've exited. That's kind of my primary focus right now.
Mm-hmm. I think a plan's a plan's a plan in a lot of cases. Like you can get some people who have a tremendous amount of wealth and they need more sophisticated tools, but the run of the mill plan for the average net worth person, there's not a whole lot that changes on what they need from a protection and a growth and a risk standpoint. Um, so I could see why, but all the people are different. They have different challenges, they have different personalities, and your ability to kind of unpack that and figure out where the pain is and help solve that, I think, is the magic. It's the skill set that's the most valuable.
I agree.
So, all right, you get to this place, and did you decide that you wanted out of the day to day, or how did the merger piece happen? Because sometimes it's you market it and you're like, hey, I want to sell a piece, and then other times people knock on your door.
I had a couple of firms had reached out to me, so I had gone through the process with a couple of firms, and at the time, uh, one I went pretty deep with, but I told them at the beginning, I said, I think there's about a 5% chance I would sell. And they knew that, so they went through the process with me. So I had kind of started that process. Just a good fortune thing. The firm that I merged with was on the same floor in the same building. And so I was acquainted with the main principal who on the wealth management side. And so literally seeing each other in the bathroom, we would kind of talk a little bit. And so we started talking in early 20, probably April, May 22, and had a good first visit. So then we just kept scheduling meetings, and he was looking to bring, he was wanting to bring someone in with them, whether that was in a tuck-in situation or merger. Our books of business were different, but our revenue profits were really close. So it was easy to come on in a 50-50 merger. I was 100% owner of my firm. The two guys I merged with were basically split the ownership in their firm. So that's how I sold 20% and still had more ownership than each of them combined. They were a little more than me, but each of them individually. And so it was just really kind of good fortune. I told my team from day one what was going on, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking at this. I don't know if I'm going to do it," and kept them abreast of every meeting. And so, because we're in the same building, it kind of sped up the process. It made it easier to meet and to discuss. And so, it took probably 6 or 7 months. We just took our time with it, and then merger actually happened January 1 of 21. I said that was 22. We merged at the beginning of 21. So misspoke earlier about that. So it was May, June of 20 when we started talks, and we merged beginning of 21. So
yeah, I think some people think this is an instant process if they haven't seen a transaction like this happen. And I think there's a ton of wisdom in you taking your time and going through the process and getting to know your partners. You use the word divorce later in the journey, but nobody actually talks about the dating. It's just kind of like they want to go from a one night stand to married, and then they don't even begin to give any thought to the fact that you could get divorced at some point. And so I'm so glad that you're talking about all of the pieces instead of
so an irony is that main partner I mentioned, he's an attorney, very bright guy, super driven, learned a lot from him. And it was a blessing to have him in as we were going through merger talks, because he had a kind of a legal acumen to get that done. So that was helpful. The irony of it is when you go through a business divorce, he has that same legal acumen. So, but we got to a good place where, for me, for that third bite of the apple exit. And I really have never thought about that irony until you just said that. That skill set was great in the dating part, as I said, and getting married, and then that skill set served him well in the exit part. But the thing that the business divorce did for me, I was going to stay on board in a more of a limited role, but I was going to stay plugged in. It kind of drew a line in the sand and said, "Okay, you're done." And so it's gotten me to my next, no pun intended, that's the title of your book, but got me to my next place, quicker. And so I could develop out Trent Premier Growth and what I'm doing. So.
Now I see a picture over your left shoulder there. Somebody it looks like a white dress. That person's probably pretty important in this journey from a support and maybe just a rub on the back or a pat on the back and say, "Baby, it's going to be okay." How long has that person been a part of your life?
Lisa and I have been together for 10 years. We just celebrated our 8th wedding anniversary. Wow. It's interesting you asked that, because she's had a huge impact on me, and has this very cool combination of probably one of the most caring, empathetic people that I know. She can be moved to tears, what seems to me like so easily. She's so touched by so many things, but she combines that with this incredible street smarts. And there have been things I've done in my business, whether it was hiring somebody that she just was like, I don't know. And, it's like she's 100%. Usually when she's telling, and I would dig in sometimes and go, no, this makes sense. I'm doing this. And so
Yeah.
I've learned over the years to, I always, her name is Lisa. Her nickname is Tiny, although she's 5'8", 5'9". She's not tiny by any means. But anyway, she just has a ton of street smarts, and I'm so blessed just to have the way she encourages me. I kind of feel like I want to feel like I don't need that. And maybe to some degree, I don't have to have that, but man, it's pretty awesome. So when you're getting that, and she was phenomenal in that third bite of the apple, the business divorce we went through, it was great to be able to go through that together and have her support. So
Yeah, I find that the person is either supportive or destructive, right? There's not a middle of the road thing where you're just over there doing the thing. And the other thing I found is folks who usually get to the level of success that you have somebody who believes in them, but is willing to tell them that they disagree with them, tell
mhm.
them why they disagree with them, even if it's just my intuition says this isn't the right thing. And then it just gives you an alert for something that you can watch out for. But in the end, I think in a lot of ways, it always ends up being your decision, but it's just another point of data for you to consider while you're going on that journey.
I'm gonna grab something. I thought you were referencing this. Can you see this?
I can see the lower one. I see the house, but I don't see
Yeah.
the people if there's people in there.
So can you see that?
Yeah. Oh,
So
wow.
you ever heard of what a row house?
Yes, sir.
You heard the term shotgun house?
Uh-huh.
So that's the home. It's probably been my biggest inspiration. That's the home my father grew up in,
Wow.
and they uh, they had an outhouse. You know what an outhouse is?
100%.
They had an outhouse till he was in the 10th grade, actually. So he's got many quotes, but one of my dad's quotes is that most people grew up with 2 bedrooms and a bath. I grew up with 1 room and a path. So those shotgun houses are just one big room, and you had a basically kind of divided, but you had a living area and place where you slept, and the whole family slept in the same room. And the more I thought about the outhouse thing, I was like, oh, you got to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and it's winter time. What? I mean,
It
or any
just
time. But he talked about the embarrassment of having to, because when you dig a hole to go to the bathroom in, right? 6 feet deep. When it fills up, you got to move it. You put dirt on top, move the outhouse. And he said, they would dig the hole during the day when it would fill up, or a new hole, and then they would move the outhouse at night because they were embarrassed by it. But I mean, people could see it. I'm not sure why they were embarrassed, but
Hey guys, as you might know, a very small percentage of the people who actually listen to this podcast are subscribers. So do us a favor, subscribe. In fact, we did some analytics and we found out that only 25% of the people who listen are subscribers. And our goal is to get that to about 75% over the next 3 months. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button so you get notified when our new episodes come. We plan to bring immense value to you guys going forward as we continue to improve the content that we create at Dreamcatchers. Your dreams should be real.
anyway, both of my parents, particularly my dad, man, grew up just. I'm sure people have grown up tougher, but it was his journey and everything that he overcame has always been an inspiration to me. So, and
Man.
that the painting I showed you was something to tell you about my wife's character. We have a picture of that house. He lived on Baker Row. So there was a man named Baker who built these houses in a row, these shotgun houses. And so that's Baker Row. She had an artist. She found somebody to do a painting of it. So it's a real
Wow.
special thing. And then I have a nephew, my brother little brother or son is named Layman Baker. My father's first name is Layman. He didn't go by that. He went by his middle name, but Baker Trent is in honor of Baker Rowe. So pretty cool stuff. Didn't mean to go off
You
on that
think?
tangent, but I thought that was the picture you were looking at when you said that. So
Yeah, no, I see Lisa there. I saw Lisa on your profile or on one of your posts. I was like, she comments on every post. She's on it. She's supporting and promoting. So, all right, we get to this place, right? And there people think that the exit is the end of the road. But you said, I'm never going to retire. I retire is a very interesting word. For me, retire just means you have the ability, your work optional, right? That's what
right.
retire means to me. And I
And
think the
we
quicker you get
used
to
that.
that,
We borrowed that phrase, but I used work optional lifestyle. I use that over. I said that's our goal. I want to get you to work optional lifestyle. But go ahead.
yeah. So when you're work optional, I consider you to be retired because you have the flexibility and freedom to do as you please without having to, give your time to earn money. And so you've hit the ground running. Some people say, "Oh, just take a year off and explore and think." And some people call it drinking and thinking. And it's like, I don't think that's really a good idea for people who've been getting after it for 30 years.
I've never
Um,
heard drinking and thinking, but
yeah.
no, I didn't go there. So
And then there's the, oh, well, go find yourself on a beach or go scuba diving, or people come up with all these grandiose ideas. Go backpacking through Europe or walk the Appalachian Trail or whatever the equivalent is on the West Coast. And I hear people saying these things. It's like, oh, they got to go find themselves. But the finding yourself is done on the inside. And you talked about documenting stuff and having intentional review earlier in the show. But you had a plan, even though you said it was only 20% baked, before you walked out. So, where did the wisdom come from to get ready for your next prior to your exit?
uh, OPE and OPR were two big ones. I think it's Jim Rohn that talks about other people's experiences.
Mhm.
And I don't know if he used the phrase OPE. I think he did. I don't know if I'd coined that myself just from because I love acronyms. And then I also changed that, not changed it. The extension of that is other people's resources. So for me, when I started at 24, straight commission, you're so just, it's like, I got to figure this out. I was blessed to have a sales manager and the manager of the branch I was in, and they stressed to us the importance of reading personal development books and back then audio tapes. And so I think when you're constantly trying to figure out how do I improve, waking up with what we used to call waking up with a zero every day, it was just a quest to try to learn and figure things out and find other successful people through, like I said, reading and tapes and then resources. So just studying other people was and doing it for years. We were for years, I sent a birthday book every year to every client and then friends. So I wanted to share something that had impacted me. We sent out a weekly, once a week for years. Well, just until I left, we sent out a weekly wisdom session. So it was probably a 300-word excerpt from a book. And I would have a quote at the top. We would put a Bible verse at the bottom. I walk into a client, it's an airplane mechanic who was a client of mine. Um, I walk in, he's in Dallas, Texas. I walk into his office, or not, or to his offices, and he's got a bulletin board with it's got a glass case on it. He's got like 9 of these wisdom sessions popped up on his bulletin board. And man, it just hit me. And I'd had people tell me how much they enjoyed it, but most people just, if you hear from one person or two that they really love it, you hope that there's another 50 that do that just don't say it, and that's fine. but that was pretty impactful. So just a quest to learn. I think it was more just going, I've got to figure this out. And so I'm going to, I've got to obviously do my job, but part of my job too is reading. And so you're doing that at night and on the weekends and maybe early morning, whatever it may be. So.
So you find the wisdom in your, was that impact intoxicating, addictive? Is that what you decided you wanted more of?
Definitely intoxicating. Super. The other people's just super curious. So I would find, Zoom is awesome now because you can connect with anybody in the world, right? But I would just find people that I admired, and I would go, okay, they weren't born like that, more than likely. Maybe some of them were, but let me reach out to this person. Hey, can we go to lunch? I want to learn how you got to where you are, and just this question after question after question, and just trying to uncover clues. So that's been a big part of my journey. And you're somewhat blessed in wealth management because that you're getting your client's story. So just by virtue of what I was doing, I'm learning from everybody has something to teach you, right? Everybody. And so that's what was cool about what I did. So it's kind of you use the word tapestry a few times in your books. It's kind of a tapestry, or in your last book, of all of that. So.
And so you're weaving it together. Was there a particular moment where you're like, I want to make sure that that doesn't happen, or I need to do this to make sure that this does happen?
I think mine was always more making stuff that happen, Certainly you're going to learn, I don't need to do this, these are habits I need to not do anymore. And so, it's stuff as simple as when you're in your car, are you going to listen to talk radio? Or are you going to put a cassette tape in? Now it's podcasts. So my Tiny, Lisa, who you asked about earlier, she jokes with me, and this has been kind of recent. She says, you read and read and read. She says, you Zoom and Zoom and Zoom. And she says, you podcast and podcast and podcast. So if I'm going downstairs to make, if I'm working at home, if I'm going downstairs to make a sandwich, I've got 2 sets of AirPods. So I'm always putting, those in, and I've got a podcast queued up. I mean, that's how you and I met. I was listening to some of Justin Breen's guest appearances, and he was on your podcast, and I reached out to you because I really was enamored with your podcast and how good it was.
So grateful for that, and grateful for our interaction, because I know I'm better because of it, David. All right, so you weave this tapestry together, apply it against the things that you're going through or encountering, and you get to the place, that, and we're coming back to the beginning, that the end is imminent. What happens the day you wake up? Or I don't know if the wire cleared on the same day that you signed the paper. Sometimes it doesn't clear till overnight. The next day when you wake up, the money's in the bank, the responsibilities are gone. What's it feel like?
I was just ready. And so it didn't, I was just, it was like jubilation, because I was just like, man, this is, now keep in mind, because we're going through this the way the last part of the exit was, I had already started. We had scheduled mediation. So 2 months before we didn't schedule mediation. It was for 2 months later. So all the back and forth went away then on the lawsuit stuff. And so then it was like, okay, we're going to get to mediation. I'm going to get a deal done. I've got plenty of money, and I want to get what's reasonable. I kind of put fair out of the equation. It was fair, but and so I had that 2 months then. It was kind of like so it was before the wire hit, if that makes sense. So I had 2 months where I was really like, okay, man, now I don't have to manage this business divorce because we're not going to have a bunch of back and forth. And so I got going then and trying to kind of carve out the vision, and because it's evolving. If I may, and I'm gonna preface this to say this is not a shameless plug for Jerome. His book Next came out in December of 23. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so this is the book. I actually just got it about 5 days ago and was able to finish it before our interview. But this morning, Jerome, I got up at 4:30, going through the Daily Walk Bible with Tiny. So she wasn't awake, but we're going through it together and talking about it. So I got my time with the chairman of the universe in, and then wanted to finish your book. So I get to chapter 12, and I'm going to read 2 paragraphs. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
This, and I've already had Tiny read this morning when she woke up, but this, dude, this hit me, and I'll talk about why I'm going to get through. But here we go. In the unfolding narrative of your post-exit life, the quest for connection, made that an acronym, QFC. The quest for connection emerges as a central theme. The quest is more than just a search for social interaction. It is a deep and meaningful journey to forge bonds that enrich and invigorate your life. It's about finding and nurturing relationships that resonate with your evolving identity and newfound aspirations. Next paragraph, the second one. This pursuit of connection takes various forms. It could be rekindling old friendships. I've done that had taken a backseat during your busy career, or reaching out to new acquaintances. I've done a ton of that, you and I today, right? Or we've had a couple interactions before this. Reaching out to new acquaintances who share your current interests and passions. These connections bring a sense of camaraderie and belonging, reminding you that relationships I'm laughing at the last word here, are a vital part of life's tapestry. Dude, that is, so I wrote up here, I wrote at the top of the page, pointed to that, and I just put mission, because and so I had, Justin Breen gave me an idea, and this wasn't his original idea. I can't remember who he got it from. He names his years now. This is his 3rd year. And so I named 2024 Connect to Give. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just trying to connect with purpose, right? I don't need to talk to everybody, and not everybody needs to talk to me necessarily, but trying to find people that I feel like there will be a good connection, and then figure out a way, how can I enhance their lives, whether it's in a small way, with no expectation for anything in return. So I told Jerome earlier, pre-podcast, that his book Next is like poetry for entrepreneurs. And I don't even like poetry that I know of. Maybe I do now, but anyway, so
I appreciate you pulling out those tidbits. Relationships are the ultimate capital. I think so many people feel like money's the game, but the money's only interesting for the things that you can do with it, or the experiences you can create for the people that you want to spend time with. And so, exalting relationships to that highest level is something that's really special. And I think that ties us perfectly into BMSR. What is BMSR, and how are you helping people on the backside of their exits or getting ready to exit with BMSR?
BMSR is body, mind, spirit relationships. So I have a spreadsheet that I use for me personal, or for how I track things. This isn't for everybody, but I have categories that I track in each area, in the area of body, mind, spirit, and relationships. And so maybe I can give you one example of each of those if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So body is as simple as just moving your body. And so whether that's for me, it's making sure I get walks in every day. And one of the quotes that another quote from Jim Rohn, he always said, watch me. He always said, listen to me carefully, but don't watch me too close. And his point is, he says, hey, I'm teaching this to you, but I'm always working on it myself. So I'm not perfect at any of this, but walking. And then I've got a strength training routine, which is relatively short, but I try to get that in 3 days a week, sometimes 4. And so that's an example of the body area. And they obviously all feed each other. The mind is what we're talking about today. It's what we're doing right now, reading. I mean, I do plenty of that. So that's kind of an easy one for me to execute. And I've got to realize that that's not that easy for everybody, but just feeding your mind through podcasts, books, meeting people, asking questions, learning. Spirit is just what it means, whether you're a quote religious person or not, something spiritual that resonates with you. For me, I'm Christian. Faith is something that I'm continually trying to grow in, and so do that by reading scripture, but also just by being still. Prayer has always been something that I'm not great at it. I've gotten better and better. So that's body, mind, spirit, and then relationships could probably fall under mind somewhat, but to me, it's a separate category, because it's just what's the end of that, the vital part of life's tapestry. So it's man, it's the fruit of life. So yeah, that's and then I talked to you earlier about, before we started, just I'm a big believer in 30-day sprints. You can really do a lot in 30 days.
And so tell me more about that philosophy, because I know that there's a book out there called The 12-Week Year that some people are big on. And it's like, hey, have 4 years in one. Well, talk about the 30-day sprint and maybe how you've implemented that and the difference that it's made for you.
I think in 90 days, you can accomplish a lot. What I've seen can happen though with that, you may get 40 days in, and you're like, dadgummit, I'm not doing what I said I was going to do. And you can just give up, or not give up, but maybe you're not as dialed in, and so, if you do that, let the next 50 days go by and you're not executing on what your goals were. And you go, well, I'll pick it up next quarter. That's what I like about 30 days. Now you can do the same thing in 30 days. You can be 10 days in and say, hey, I'm not getting it done. But to me, I look at that. If I'm coaching somebody, I'm going to say, hey, look, the 10 days is gone. Okay. Let's focus on the next 20 and try to get it back on track. And then you got momentum going into your next 30 days. And so I just like the frequency of 30 days. And really, it all comes down to I think probably many of your listeners may have read Atomic Habits. That's one of a great book, but really what it comes down to is, I mean, you can break it down to, here's what I got to do daily, hourly, so, but if you can stack one good day after another, to me, that's the biggest key. Just habit stacking and day stacking, getting habits to where you're doing them. And so you no longer have to track them. Okay, whatever that is, you're like, well, I'm checking this off every day. So you need to throw that out. You're doing that. And you don't want to get away from it, but you're doing that. So then you build on that and go to a higher habit. So it's just stacking great days one after the other. And then if you have a tough day, just learn from it and move on. You're done with that day. So
yeah, I love the wisdom and what David is sharing with you guys, ladies and gentlemen. Like, if you let too much time pass, you can be drifting, and that drifting will get you off course, which will then lead to less efficiency. And so he's saying compress the time and then review so that you don't lose days, weeks, months, years for some people. And
yeah.
in doing that, your ability to stay on course, stay on track, gets you the outcome that you want faster, maybe than you planned on it ever happening, after you get through the initial honeymoon phase where you believe it's going to happen instantly in excess of everything. And so there's some quote out there that people underestimate what they can do in a month or what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what can happen in 3 or 5 years. But it's just stacking the days, it's stacking the activities, it's stacking the habits to get you to that outcome. I've watched so many people who want say they want this or want that, but they're not willing to do any consistent activity in order to have this or that happen. And using David's BMSR system, it's my belief that you can get exactly what you want in a shorter amount of time with less mistakes. And
Yep.
so, David, if folks want to learn more about BMSR, what can happen on the backside of an exit, and some of the other amazing things that you're helping folks out with, where should they go?
I would say right now, go to my LinkedIn page, just David Trent. We are rebuilding or I shouldn't say, we've got a real basic site for Trent Premier Growth out there, but we're hopefully that'll be Trent Premier Growth, TrentPremierGrowth.com will be finished and out there inside of a few weeks. So can go there once that's done. Do have another website, a company called Absolute Capital, and there's some information on there. It's acap.b as in boy, z. All of that's on my LinkedIn page. I would think if you were just wanting to get a snapshot of what I'm about and where I'm headed, LinkedIn's a good spot. So
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's the best place because they can see your history, they can see your track record, they're going to know you're real, they're going to see that beautiful blazer you have on, and they're going to want to talk to you and learn more about what you have going on and how you might be able to help them get to their next. David, you're an example of a dream catcher, man. I'm so grateful to meet you through Justin Breen, and I'm just so excited for the impact that you're going to have on the backside of your exit and the legacy that you're going to leave. I see you influencing tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands or millions of people in this second chapter that you have. And I'm really excited for the impact that that's going to make on the world. So thank
dude,
you so much for
I was gonna say, am I an official member of the Dreamcatchers?
you have been initiated.
I love it. I may need a cap or something, man. So
Oh, well, you'll get something. Don't worry. Um, so the way I always wrap these episodes up is, what's the one thing you want the listeners to take away from this episode?
um, boy, that's a tough one. I think the theme that came out throughout is relationships, and just invest. Start with your family, because if you're not doing that, then to me the other stuff doesn't matter. But just investing in your relationships and uh, cultivating those relationships, nourishing them. So that's far and away number one. If you're doing that, man, a lot of things are going to take care of themselves. So
I love it. One of my affirmations that I say is, everyone I come in contact with is better because of our encounter. And so David's
perfect.
emphasis on relationships has created great wealth for him and his family. It's enriched the people that he served as a financial advisor. And as he continues to cultivate and develop those relationships, doors are opening for him that he might not have seen for himself. And this isn't unique to him. This can happen for you. And so I encourage you to connect intentionally, as David said, because you probably don't need to talk to everybody. And then from there, your ability to have new opportunities open up, it's infinite. Until the next time, your dreams should be real. David, thanks again. We'll talk soon.